The rain-slicked streets of Brooklyn gleamed like shattered glass under the sodium lamps, and June Harper stumbled into the shelter of a faded awning, her heart pounding not from the downpour but from the eviction notice crumpled in her pocket. At 28, she'd scraped by on freelance graphic gigs and barista shifts, but tonight, desperation clawed deeper than the cold, until a faded flyer caught her eye. Dog walker needed. Evenings. Pays cash. No experience required. She tore it down, fingers numb, whispering to the storm, "This has to be enough." Little did she know, that scrap of paper would unravel the threads of her guarded life, pulling her into a love she never dared dream possible, fierce and forbidden in ways that would test every fragile boundary she'd built around her heart. June wiped the rain from her face and scanned the address scribbled on the flyer, 47 Elmwood Lane, a narrow brownstone squeezed between a bodega and a laundromat in Park Slope. The neighborhood hummed with the familiar rhythm of New York, delivery bikes zipping past, the distant wail of a siren, the scent of wet pavement mingling with fresh pretzels from a street cart. She buzzed the intercom, half expecting silence, but a crackly voice answered, warm and laced with a faint southern drawl that cut through the chill. "Come on up, dear. Doors unlocked. Mind the step, it's a killer." The apartment on the second floor was a time capsule of faded elegance, lace curtains yellowed by decades, bookshelves groaning under the weight of dog-eared novels and porcelain figurines, the air thick with a scent of lavender and old paper. And there, in the center of it all, sat Eleanor Voss, 82 years young, perched on a velvet armchair like a queen holding court. Her silver hair was pinned in a loose chignon, her eyes sharp as cut glass behind wire-rimmed glasses, and at her feet, a scruffy Boston Terrier named Rufus-eyed June with the suspicion of a seasoned bouncer. "You're the girl from the flyer?" Eleanor asked, her voice a melody of curiosity and command. June nodded, suddenly aware of her soaked jeans clinging like a second skin, her dark curls frizzing into a halo of chaos. "June Harper. I love dogs. Used to walk my neighbors back in Ohio." Eleanor studied her for a long moment, then chuckled, a sound like dry leaves rustling. "Ohio, eh? Flat as a pancake and twice as dull. Sit, child. Rufus here needs his evening constitutional, but first tea. Can't have you catching your death." As June sank into the sagging sofa, Rufus hopped onto her lap with surprising trust, his warm weight a balm against the ache in her chest. Eleanor shuffled to the kitchenette, her cane tapping a rhythmic Morse code on the hardwood, and returned with mismatched mugs steaming with chamomile. "Tell me, June Harper from Ohio, why a pretty thing like you answering dog walker ads in the dead of night? City's eaten your dreams already." The question hung heavy, and June felt the walls she'd built, the ones that kept her queerness tucked away like a guilty secret, her family back home a distant echo of disapproval, crack just a fraction. "Rent's due," she said simply, stroking Rufus's ears. "And I needed a win." Eleanor nodded, as if she'd heard that refrain 1,000 times. Life's full of those. Wins and losses, tangled like this mutt's leash. You'll do 3 evenings a week, 7 sharp. $10 a pop, cash on the spot. And if you bring stories, even better. Deal? June walked Rufus that first night through the rain-washed streets, the terrier tugging her toward the old oak in Prospect Park where lovers carved their initials into eternity. The city felt alive in a way it hadn't before, neon signs flickering like distant stars, laughter spilling from brownstone stoops, the pulse of possibility thrumming under her boots. Back at Eleanor's, the old woman waited with a plate of oatmeal cookies, crumbly and sweet, insisting June stay for just a nibble. Stories flowed then, unbidden. June's failed art school dreams, the ex who ghosted her after one too many, your too intense fights, the quiet nights staring at her ceiling, wondering if love was just a myth for straights. Eleanor listened without judgment, her eyes twinkling with secrets of her own. "Darlin', intensity's a gift. Don't let the fools dim it." By the second week, the routine settled like a well-worn coat. June arrived at 7, leash in hand, Rufus yipping his greeting. They'd wander the park's winding paths, June sketching strangers on her phone. Joggers in neon, nannies pushing strollers, the occasional couple stealing kisses under the willows. Eleanor paid promptly, slipping an extra 5 into June's palm with a wink. For the sketches. You've got an eye, girl. One evening, as twilight bled into indigo, Eleanor handed her a faded photo from a drawer. Two young women in 1950s dresses, arms linked, laughing against a sepia skyline. My Sarah, she said softly. We met at a diner off Times Square. She waited tables. I typed letters for a lawyer. Thought we'd have forever. But forever's a liar sometimes. June's throat tightened, the image stirring something deep, a echo of her own hidden heartaches, the girls she'd loved in stolen moments, only to watch them fade into just friends under societal stares. She looks happy, June murmured. With you. Eleanor's smile was bittersweet. She was. Until the world decided otherwise. But that's a tale for another walk. They didn't speak of it again that night, but the photo lingered in June's mind, a ghost of what might be. Weeks blurred into a fragile rhythm. June's bank account steadied, enough for a deposit on a studio in Bed-Stuy, but it was the evenings with Eleanor that anchored her. Rufus became her shadow, trotting beside her with unwavering loyalty, and Eleanor's stories wove tapestries of a Brooklyn long gone. Jazz clubs and basements where women danced with women, raids by blue-uniformed shadows, the quiet defiance of hidden lives. Love's always been a rebellion, June, Eleanor said one crisp October night, as they sat on her fire escape overlooking the avenue. Especially when it's between two souls the world wasn't built for. June felt exposed under those words, her pulse quickening at the unspoken invitation to share her own truths. But fear clamped her lips shut, fear of the judgment she'd fled Ohio to escape, the family Bible quotes her mother still texted on Sundays. Then came the call that shattered the idyll. It was a Thursday, mid-November, the air sharp with the promise of snow. June's phone buzzed during her shift at the coffee shop, an unknown number flashing like a warning. Miss Harper? This is Dr. Leong from Mount Sinai. Mrs. Voss. Eleanor. She's had a fall. Hip fracture. She's stable, but asking for you. June's world tilted, the espresso machine hissing forgotten as she bolted from the counter, apron strings trailing like regrets. Traffic snarled the bridge, horns blaring accusations, and by the time she burst into the sterile ward, Eleanor's room was a fortress of beeps and whispers. She lay small against the starched sheets, for lines snaking like veins, but her eyes lit when June entered. There you are, troublemaker, she rasped, voice thinned by pain meds. Rufus's photo, snapped on a sunny walk, taped to the bedrail. June sank into the chair, gripping the old woman's hand, calloused from years of quiet battles. What happened? Eleanor waved it off. Slippery floors. Devil's handiwork. But listen, darlin', I need a favor. My daughter's flying in from Chicago. Vivian. She's complicated. Takes after her father, God rest him, stiff as a board, twice as cold. Tell her about the walks. About Rufus. Make her see, I'm not just some burden. June promised, though unease coiled in her gut. Vivian Voss. The name conjured faceless executives in power suits, the kind who'd glance at June's tattoos and assume she was trouble. But she stayed through the night, reading aloud from Eleanor's dog-eared copy of The Price of Salt, the words of forbidden desire wrapping around them like a shared secret. Dawn crept in, gray and unforgiving, and with it, the complication arrived. Vivian Voss swept into the room like a storm front, mid-40s, impeccably tailored in wool crepe, her auburn hair sliced into a bob that framed high cheekbones and eyes the color of storm clouds. She carried a leather briefcase like armor, her heels clicking judgment on the linoleum. Mother, she said, voice clipped as a boardroom directive, leaning down for an air kiss that didn't quite land. Then her gaze flicked to June, lingering a beat too long, assessing, perhaps dismissing. And you are? June. The dog walker. The words felt inadequate, stripped bare. Vivian's brow arched, a perfect crescent of skepticism. Dog walker. Of course. Mother mentioned you. The Ohio girl with the sketches. Eleanor chuckled weakly from the bed. She's more than that, Viv. She's family now. Be nice. Vivian's lips thinned, but she extended a hand. Cool. Manicured. Rings glinting like warnings. June shook it, feeling the spark of something electric, unwanted, in the contact. Static, she told herself. Just static. The days that followed were a tense ballet. Vivian took charge with the efficiency of a CEO dismantling a merger. Doctors consulted, home aides hired, Rufus boarded at a luxury kennel uptown. June hovered on the edges, walking the corridors with coffee runs and stolen glances at Vivian. How her fingers drummed impatience on her phone, the way exhaustion softened her edges when she thought no one watched. Eleanor noticed, of course. She's always been a fortress, my girl, she confided one afternoon as June fluffed her pillows. Built it after Sarah left us. Heartbreak does that. Turns love to stone. But under it, fire. You do well to remember. June tried to remember, tried to keep her distance as Vivian's presence filled the room like smoke. But proximity bred cracks. One evening, after a grueling PT session, Vivian slumped in the visitor's lounge, head in hands, the briefcase forgotten on the floor. June approached with 2 vending machine lattes, the steam curling like questions. She'll pull through, June said softly, sliding into the seat opposite. Eleanor's tougher than she looks. Vivian looked up, eyes raw, mascara smudged just enough to humanize her. You don't know her like I do. The falls, the forgetting, it's been coming for years. And now this. Circus of caretakers. Her voice broke, the fortress trembling. I'm supposed to fix it all. Always have. June reached across the table, hesitating before covering Vivian's hand with her own. You're not alone in this. The touch lingered, Vivian's skin warm against the chill of the room, and for a heartbeat, the air thickened with unspoken hungers, the kind June had buried deep, the kind that whispered of silk sheets and midnight confessions. Vivian pulled away first, but not before June saw the flicker. Recognition, desire, fear. Thank you, June, she murmured, standing abruptly. For being here. As she left, June's heart raced, a traitor to her resolve. This was danger, dressed in pinstripes. Eleanor's recovery dragged into weeks, a slow march of rehab gyms and takeout Thai in paper containers. Rufus returned, tail wagging forgiveness, and the walks resumed, June and the terrier tracing familiar paths, now with Vivian occasionally joining, her stride measured against June's easy lope. Conversations started stilted. Weather, Eleanor's progress, the merits of microbrews versus Merlot. But layers peeled like onion skins. Vivian confessed her divorce over a bench in the park, the ink still fresh on the papers. He said I worked too much. I said he breathed too loud. June laughed, a sound that surprised them both, and shared her own scars. The girlfriend who'd chosen a ring over a revelation, the coming-out letter her father burned without a word. One frost-kissed morning, as snow dusted the bridges like powdered sugar, Vivian lingered after dropping Eleanor at a follow-up appointment. They stood by the East River, ferries churning the gray water, and Vivian's voice dropped low. Mother talks about you like you're the daughter she always wanted. Free, unapologetic. I envy that. June turned, wind whipping her scarf, and met those storm eyes. Envy's a start, but what if it's more? The words hung, bold and breathless. Vivian stepped closer, the space between them electric, her breath mingling with June's in the cold. Then a tentative brush of lips, soft, seeking, tasting of peppermint and possibility. June melted into it, hands framing Vivian's face, the world narrowing to this stolen spark. But sparks ignite fires, and they're smoldered with complications. Eleanor sensed the shift, her knowing smiles a gentle prod. Be brave, girls. Life's too short for what-ifs. Yet Vivian pulled back, walls rebuilding overnight. "This can't happen," she said one night in the hospital parking lot, rain sheeting the windshield of her Audi. "I'm leaving for Chicago next week. The firm's got me on a merger."
And you?
"You're." She trailed off, the unsaid word. "Younger, freer, not me." A chasm. June's chest ached, the eviction notice a ghost in her pocket reborn. "I'm what you need, Viv. What we've both been walking toward." But Vivian drove away, taillights blurring into the storm, leaving June with Rufus's leash and a heart in tatters. The holidays loomed like a cruel joke, twinkling lights mocking the hollow in June's chest. She threw herself into work, sketching holiday cards for a boutique in Williamsburg, the lines blurring with unshed tears. Eleanor, discharged to her brownstone with a walker and a nurse, insisted on a proper feast. June arrived with pie from the corner bakery, Rufus underfoot, to find the table set for 3, mismatched china, candles flickering against the draft. Vivian was there, unannounced, her coat draped over the chair like a truce flag. "Couldn't let you two eat without me," she said, voice steady but eyes pleading. Dinner unfolded in fits of laughter and loaded silences. Eleanor's tales of Christmases past, Rufus stealing turkey scraps, the wine loosening tongues. After, as June washed dishes in the tiny kitchen, Vivian appeared behind her, arms slipping around her waist in a ghost of an embrace. "I tried to forget you," she whispered, lips grazing June's neck. "But you're in every sketch, every quiet moment." June turned, water dripping from her hands, and pulled Vivian close, their kiss deepening into hunger, a release of weeks of denial. They tumbled to Eleanor's guest room, the door clicking shut on the world, bodies entwining in a dance of rediscovery. Vivian's touch was reverent, mapping scars both seen and unseen, while June's was fire, igniting the fortress brick by brick. In the afterglow, tangled in sheets scented with lavender, Vivian confessed, "I love you." Terrifyingly so. June held her, tears tracing paths on her collarbone.
"Then stay.
Build something real." But reality intruded like winter wind. Vivian's flight to Chicago was booked, the merger demanding her soul. "It's temporary," she promised at the airport, June's hand clenched in hers amid the crush of travelers. 2 months, tops. Then we figure us out." June nodded, throat tight, watching the security lines swallow her whole. The weeks stretched, texts a lifeline. "Miss your laugh. Thinking of your hands. Eleanor's asking when you're bringing scandal." But distance bred doubt. Vivian's calls grew clipped, excuses piling like snowdrifts. June walked Rufus alone, the park a graveyard of memories, her sketches turning dark with longing. Then, the call came on a slate-gray February dawn. Eleanor's nurse, voice trembling. "She's gone, June." Peaceful in her sleep. Rufus was with her. The world fractured. June raced to the brownstone, the door ajar like an invitation to grief. Eleanor lay serene, a half-smile on her lips, the photo of Sarah tucked in her hand. Vivian arrived hours later, red-eyed from a red-eye flight, collapsing into June's arms on the stoop. "I should have been here," she sobbed, the fortress crumbling to dust. They held each other through the night, Rufus curled between, a furry sentinel against the void. The funeral was a quiet affair in Greenwood Cemetery, snow blanketing the graves like forgiveness. A scattering of neighbors, Eleanor's book club ladies in veiled hats, and Vivian's estranged brother, who showed for the will reading, and little else. June stood beside Vivian at the graveside, the casket a mahogany promise kept, as the rabbi intoned words of eternal light. But it was Eleanor's letter, slipped into June's coat pocket by the nurse, that unraveled everything. Read in the cemetery chapel afterward, her spidery script a final gift. "My darlings, Vivian, my fierce girl, and June, my unexpected light. Life gave me Sarah too soon, but you two? You're my forever. The brownstone's yours, joint deed. Rufus too. Love without apology. That's the real inheritance.
Be brave."
Yours in all ways, Eleanor." Vivian stared at the paper, tears carving rivers down her face. She knew, all along. June pulled her close, the weight of legacy settling like a vow. She gave us a home. Now we make it ours. The brother grumbled about unconventional arrangements, but Vivian shut him down, voice steel. It's mother's wish. And mine. As they walked out into the fresh snow, arms linked, Rufus trotting ahead, June felt the shift, a life reborn from ashes, love no longer hidden but claimed. Spring thawed Brooklyn's bones, cherry blossoms rioting pink against the brownstones. June and Vivian moved into Eleanor's. Now theirs, piecing a life from fragments. Vivian negotiating remote work, her firm bending to her will. June's sketches blooming into a children's book deal, tales of dogs and daring hearts. Mornings blurred into lazy coffees on the fire escape, Rufus begging for scraps, evenings into slow dances in the living room, vinyl spinning Sinatra like a heartbeat. But the real magic wove in quiet moments, Vivian's hand on June's belly during a rare doctor's visit, the two pink lines confirming what their love had sparked, a family of their own, unexpected and profound. Eleanor's photo watched from the mantel, Sarah beside her now in a new frame, their smiles a benediction. On the anniversary of that first walk, June led Vivian to the old oak in the park, carving their initials with a pocket knife, J and V, entwined like vines. To forever, Vivian whispered, kissing her under the boughs. June grinned, hand splayed protective over the swell of her abdomen. And the adventures after. In the city that never sleeps, they'd found their rhythm, a love fierce as Brooklyn rain, tender as autumn leaves, a testament that sometimes the kindest strangers become the truest homes. Yet the path hadn't been without shadows. Whispers from Vivian's colleagues, "Is that your roommate?" tested their resolve. Echoes of Eleanor's era. June's family, when the news broke via a tentative email, responded with silence that stung like salt. But together, they faced it. Pride flags in the window, a baby shower with Eleanor's book club as aunts in spirit, therapy sessions where Vivian unpacked her fortress, brick by armored brick. "You make me want to be seen," she'd say, vulnerability her new strength. The birth came on a sweltering July dawn, Labor Day irony not lost on them. Little Eleanor Rose Voss Harper entered wailing, fists tiny battering rams against the world, her mother's eyes staring back from that scrunched face, one storm gray, one chestnut warm. In the hospital room, as nurses bustled and Rufus snuffled at the bassinet, Vivian traced June's exhausted cheek. "You changed everything that day with the flyer. From stranger to savior." June laughed through tears, cradling their daughter.
"Nah, you did.
At the funeral, when you chose us." Years folded like origami, Rosie toddling after Rufus in the park, her giggles a symphony. Vivian's promotion to partner, celebrated with rooftop champagne. June's book tour, sketches of their patchwork family inspiring fans from coast to coast. Challenges came, Rosie's questions about, why two moms? The ache of Eleanor's empty chair at holidays, but they met them head-on, weaving a tapestry rich with human warmth, forgiveness emails to Ohio kin who softened over time, community suppers where stories swapped like recipes. On Rosie's 5th birthday, they scattered Eleanor's ashes under that carved oak, the girl clutching a drawing of a dog with angel wings. "Grandma's watching?" she asked, wide-eyed. Vivian knelt, June's hand in hers. "Always, baby. Loving us fierce." As petals drifted on the breeze, June felt the full circle. The kind stranger who'd walked a dog, now mother, partner, heir to a legacy of unapologetic love. In America's beating heart, they'd carved their forever, proving that funerals aren't endings, but fierce new beginnings.